Hello, everyone. My name is Vajra Ma, and I'm with the Women's Human Rights Campaign, and this interview today with Jay Keck, who is a leader in the Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoric Parents Group in Chicago, is going to be speaking with us today. And before we get to that, I want to let you know that this is part of the Women's Human Rights Campaign, or WHRC USA, the USA chapter. Today is November 17th, 2020. And just to give you a quick overview of what the Women's Human Rights Campaign is. It is a global movement of women who are dedicated to protecting women and girls' sex-based rights. And our founding document is the Women's Declaration. This was, and the whole campaign was founded in December 2019, very recently. The founding document it affirms women and girls' sex-based rights and challenges the discrimination that we experience from the replacement of the category of sex with gender identity in the law. And so far, the Declaration has over 12,500 signatures from 124 countries and 278 participating organizations. The Declaration itself is based in the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, commonly known as CEDAW, which was established in 1979, and also in the United Nations Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women in 1993. So if you want to read the Declaration and if you want to sign it, you can go to www.womensdeclaration.com. That's all one word, womensdeclaration.com. And all the information is there and the document is there. So I'd like to introduce our guest, Jay Keck, before bringing him on screen. Jay Keck lives in the suburb outside of Chicago. He has a daughter who at age 15 suddenly declared she was transgender. And that's the meaning, of course, of the rapid onset gender dysphoria. He's a member of the Kelsey Coalition, which promotes policies to protect young people from what the organization considers the medical and psychological harms of transgender medicine. Jay is also the Chicago area head of Parents of ROGD Kids. That's a global support group for for parents who have children who suddenly identify as transgender. In August of 2019, USA Today published an op-ed by Jay Keck in which he is detailing the power and influence the school districts are wielding in their unquestioned support of the rapidly exploding epidemic of mostly teen girls suddenly declaring that they have been born in the wrong body. He can be contacted at rogdchicagoarea@gmail.com. That's rogdchicagoarea@gmail.com, and that will be in the blurb beneath the video also. So I would like to bring Jay on right here. And welcome, Jay. I'm so glad you're here and appreciate your time and the work that you're doing.
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me. Happy to join you.
Yeah, and thank you for that op-ed you wrote. I read it and it's very informative. And it has a lot of links that would be very useful for parents of ROGD children. And so I just want to point them to that also. They can look up USA Today, Jay Keck, and they'll find it. They can find it online very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to ask you, how did the ROGD organization begin there, the global support group that you have, and what's the lay of the land with it right now, and give people a picture of what's going on there now, if you would.
Sure, it was formed probably 2 or 3 years ago now. Originally formed and run by a couple people, parents that have fallen into the same situation with their daughters out of Canada. And they started this small group, and it's kind of a difficult thing to start because of the sensitive nature and the highly political nature of the topic. On one hand, you like to grow it and get the word out, but on the other hand, you're inviting a lot of vitriol from a large part of the community as well. But they've done a good job of starting a grassroots organization of grown it. They have a great job of, as people contact them and look for information and wanting to join, of trying to select and weed out anyone that might be joining for the wrong reasons, might be, just the one authentic people with the real issues that we all share. And, it's grown to be in representatives from all 50 states, Canada, and then several countries outside of, Canada and the United States as well. So it continues to grow, sadly, month over month. In the Chicago area group, it's not uncommon to get a new member pretty much or two on a monthly basis. And we continue on.
Yeah. I really thank you for this work, because back in 2015, when I woke up to this situation of gender identity, there weren't any parent support groups. And I kept saying on Facebook, well, somebody should start a parent support group. The parents need support. They need to know what's going on. They need support, because, and it's here now. I mean, you're one of the main points of that. And there's some other ROGD groups too. And I'm really glad to see that happen, because as you said, you have to be careful. You have to vet the people, make sure they're sincere, they're really involved in this. And as a parent, there are a lot of pitfalls and dangers and threats, you might say, along the way, working with your child. And you detailed some of those in your USA article. Would you share some of the problems and obstacles that parents might experience when they enter into trying to advocate or care for their child in this situation?
Yeah, for sure. It's, I don't know, sad and interesting, I guess, that, as parents come to the support group, how eerily similar everybody's story is. Again, 9 times out of 10, it's a teenage daughter. 9 times out of 10, the daughter has some type of mental illness challenges, autism being very prevalent. They're loners by and large, and they struggle to belong, in their own mind to some group. So it's very common, and it's just over and over and over again, very similar version of that story. The pitfalls, it was my story, and most other people, there's a social group or someone that these kids meet online, or someone in school, because now in school, it's not rare at all. I would say most high schools will have some kids in there that are identifying as the opposite sex, and those kids become famous overnight. And the pitfalls of this school is, I learned firsthand, and all these other parents are learning firsthand, is, those schools are advocating against the parents. They're undermining the parents, and they're instantly affirming the children, even though in many cases, they are very aware of the child's past struggles and their history. And they could literally come in the next day having never exhibited any tendencies towards that, and it will be instant affirmation, and it will be like they're going to throw them a parade. And I say that's not exaggerating, that is sadly the truth.
That is such an abuse of a teenager's need to belong and to feel status to belong. And it's, as you indicated here now and in your article, that instant affirmation, they'll actually use the pronouns, preferred pronouns of that child. They will call them by a different name without telling the parents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard of a situation. I've heard it, variations from many different people of, the school starting to call, this girl by her new male name, never telling the parents and hiding the fact from the parents. And until some time when they might be cornered into a situation where they have to fess up, but it might be a year, you never know how long it's going to be. And I've heard of a situation, I had the situation where the school told me that it was my right to request she be called her actual name, yet even though I made that request, they went ahead and went against my wishes.
Yeah.
So, if you just imagine from the child's perspective, you have a school who's very supportive in their mind, willing to agree and go along with whatever she wants, and as opposed to her home, where it would be easy if you're her to view that as unsupportive parents, and you're painted into a corner that's impossible to get out of.
Yeah. This goes to the 9th article in our Women's Declaration, which indicates the right of the child to have an education that is scientifically sound in terms of biology, and the right of the parents to be able to determine the best medical decisions for their underage child. And that is being violated right and left by the schools.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's unconscionable.
And that's then outside of the schools. So the schools are on board, 1,000%. But then the vast majority of the medical community, the mental health professional community, are in lockstep with the schools. So a lot of parents come to the support group hoping that we have names of, mental health experts that will actually help children. And unfortunately, that list doesn't really exist. I'm sure there are a few out there. Sasha out of Texas is pretty well known in that arena. But I've seen firsthand, and most of the parents have seen firsthand, taking them to a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist. They follow the instant affirmation program as well. And instead of doing good, they're doing more harm.
You mentioned a
So
name.
it leaves a parent with.
Go ahead.
It just leaves a parent with, you have nowhere to turn.
Yeah, no support for the parents, which is why your group is so important. You need to have a collective voice and speak out against this. You mentioned a name from Texas, a counselor who would actually look at comorbid factors. What was the name again? It kind of garbled.
Yeah, Sasha Ayed. She's out of Texas, and she devotes her practice to that. She's one therapist, some remote session. She focuses on teen, mostly girls, and has written many articles. She's published, has her own YouTube channel, so she's out there, and she's done a lot of great work. I've been in contact after my article. I was contacted by lots of people, and I was contacted by a psychiatrist that was doing some postgraduate work at University of Michigan, and he was astonished by the dialogue around transgender and children and how adverse they were to any critical discussion on that. So it was kind of interesting to have a full-fledged psychiatrist talking to me about that situation, trying to get a better handle on it, and we've stayed in contact all along.
Oh, good. You're a good resource for him. What I understand is that school counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists can very easily get fired if they do not instantly affirm, because that word, I'm sorry, because what you are affirming is your child's natural state, and their natural health, and the parents are trying to affirm their child's health. But the affirming, that the gender identity ideology talks about is instantly affirming that they are the opposite sex, they were born in the wrong body. And the thing that is disturbing, as you say, where do you get support from the schools or the psychiatric and psychological group, people, professionals? You basically don't. You have to dig around. And this happened because it was deliberately, all of this institutional capture of the schools, of psychology, of academia, of the media, was a deliberate tactic to go under the radar of the parents and of the public. And that's been proven in the 11th Hour blog. It's called, by Jennifer Billick, the11thhourblog.com, and she documents that. So you're really up against a lot. We're all up against a lot. And you also mentioned, Jay, I'd like you to go back to sometimes, they start watching social media. The teenager starts watching social media, and suddenly they find the solution to their adolescent angst as being they're born in the wrong body. That seems to be a common thread. Yeah. Also. Yeah.
Yeah, very common. Tumblr seems to be the #1 social media site for that. And so again, you have these kids that, just generally speaking, are loners, and they haven't had a connection with the group, and they instantly find this connection online, and they now think those are their friends. Like we grew up with friends that were actual, you met them and you did something. These are online people they've never met, but they think they're their best friends, and they have the ultimate support there. So it's very addicting. I mean, it's easy to see why. I mean, I understand how it happens. It makes total sense. The dilemma is, as a parent or anyone who cares about kids, is you can see it, but how can you do something about it?
Yeah, and so it's really a warning sign that you're giving to other parents to watch what their teenager is doing in terms of what they're getting involved with online. But it happens so quickly. But there are also things online like peak resistance, PIQUE, peak resistance, where 4 lesbian young girls who are coming out very strongly that they had transitioned, so to speak, and now they've gone back to realizing that they're just fine as lesbians, as their natural state of being. So it might be a good idea, I'm just thinking of this as we're talking, for parents to point this out to their own children, their teenage children. Here's some, people speaking out, young people speaking out who tried this transitioning and have changed their minds.
Yeah. Every parent does that. They try to do that. It's just most of the time the kids aren't. They'll read it and they'll just say that doesn't apply to them. But you're just trying to plant a seed, right? A little bit of doubt that you hope will sprout at some point before they do anything that's permanent. And so, I mean, that's the basic strategy. I think most parents is to make sure their child knows they're loved, and that you have their best interest at heart, and you will support them as much as you can, and then also try to educate them on some alternatives for why they might be thinking that, and hope that somewhere down the road that information will grow a little bit in their minds and take root.
Yeah, it seems like it might be a good idea for parents to preempt, to anticipate that their kids are going to get into this indoctrination and all this material and Tumblr, as you mentioned, and elsewhere, to get to the child before the child gets to that, because who knew until this hit. Any one of our children could be a rapid onset gender dysphoric child. I know that the woman who started fourthwavenow.com, the blog, her daughter, and she's been public about this, and her daughter is actually part of the peakresistance.com. Her daughter was 15 years old and was sure that she was male and was going to transition, and then she kept fighting it. She would not let her daughter take hormones and so forth. And all of a sudden, one day, her daughter snapped out of it and said, "No, I'm a girl." And it could go flip back just as quickly. You know, I mean, come on, they're crazy adolescents, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're all crazy when we were adolescents. We were just so tossed around with what was going on in our bodies and so forth. You mentioned mostly teenage girls, and I know that the number of girls presenting in the UK, in the United Kingdom, in the last recent years has increased 4,000%. So it's much more,
Right.
yeah, the girls are presenting more and trying to change their sex more so than it used to be boys. I think it's because they want to escape being targets of rape and objectification of their bodies, you know, all of that.
Yes, I think that's what plays a large part in it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But you said that you have mostly parents of daughters coming. Any parents of boys? Is it different?
Yeah,
Boys situation?
I have a couple parents with boys, and you know, just in our group, what we just generally observe or think is the boys are rarer, but we think that they're much less likely to change their minds, that they're going to go all the way. Where a girl, you know, there's a better chance that they'll come to think a different way, but that the boys, once they start, that's a much harder train to stop. So I have no medical evidence to back that up. That's just kind of our observations and what we've seen. What
do you feel, if you'd share with people here who are watching, what the harms of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones are, especially for girls? Do you have information on that?
Well, there's lots of information out there. You know, we know that suppressing the hormones of puberty blockers, no one has studied doing that for the reason they're doing that. So I know they like to say that they're safe and it's just a pause button and then everything's going to be fine, but nobody really knows, because those are key developmental years that you're not developing, and what are the after effects to that, 10, 25, who knows down the road. I talked to a woman who was born a man and has been transgender for 30 years. Had a very interesting conversation with her, and she has friends with other people just like her, long term, and they all suffer big health issues that they all feel are directly related to long-term cross-sex hormone use. They all have vision problems, they all have neurological problems, they all share it, and she's certain that that's the cause of it. And she was pretty active. I don't recall her name now, but she was very active in she's very concerned what's going on with all these young people and wanted to get the word out on what actually happens and what a huge step that is and what a dangerous step that is, and then how really there's a tiny sliver of the population that are so dysphoric that that's needed to make you feel comfortable. I think those people exist, but most of the people like that, they see what's happening with the young kids, and they're just as aghast as we are. And many of them are trying to help too, but the trans lobby is very well funded, as you know, very well organized, and it's very difficult to get the word out.
Yeah, And there's also the threat of losing your job, losing your friends, becoming ostracized. That's another power of the trans lobby, definitely.
Yeah, I'll tell you personally, by USA Today article, I was contacted by, national news organizations, we'll just say, that wanted me on the program. That would have been in front of millions of people, but I didn't do it because I was worried the backlash from my employer. I mean, that's why I didn't do it. So, points.
Yeah, I know. This censorship and this threat, this enforcement is really, really vicious and damaging, right? Not what I was going to say or ask. I'm not blank.
Yeah. Well, while you're thinking about that, and here's another story is, what's going on is with the therapist. So I heard a story of parents that took their kid to a therapist that was, approved by the school system and evaluated the kid. And after the evaluation, he would only say off the record what he felt, but on the record, he admitted that he wouldn't say that. He just felt like he couldn't.
Yeah.
And that happened over and over and over again.
Yeah. That's really important for parents and people to understand. There's a tremendous censorship and threat of loss of livelihood. And it's just not right. It's just not right. And the trans lobby is funded by billionaires. Tremendous money pouring into it. And they have, in this situation, excuse me, with teenage girls, they are being told that they are really trans men in hiding. And the attack on the lesbian girls, the girls that would, 80%, 80 to 90% of the children, even for children young and then into teenage rapid onset, 80 to 90% will grow up to be lesbian, and the others will grow up to be heterosexual and be perfectly happy. And like you said, just a tiny little percent would persist and really apparently have that persistent need and desire to live or look like the opposite sex and try to be the opposite sex. But we know you can't be the opposite sex.
Right.
Remember what I was going to say is that the puberty blockers, when you said they're offered as a pause, the statistics show that 100% so far that take puberty blockers go on to cross-sex hormones. Puberty blockers.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's not really a pause. That's a lie. The puberty blockers interfere with bone density and brain development. And you mentioned the neurological problems that the person you spoke with, and the vision and all that, neurological problems. Higher increase of stroke and diabetes and heart disease. And then the cross-sex hormones almost always sterilize. And so these young people, being deprived of their capacity to reproduce, and they can't even make a decision like that. It's really heartbreaking. And testosterone, testosterone causes in girls sometimes enormous pain in sexual orgasm. They have excruciating pain because they've taken testosterone. So it's really an attack on the body. You were going to say something. I didn't mean to stop you.
Oh, that's just nuts. I forgot. It's on my mind now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, what would you, Jay, you've been through a lot and you're helping a lot of parents. What do you want to say to the parents out there who may have ROGD kids or may not? What advice would you give them at this point? You've given a lot of advice already, but what else would you like?
Well, yes, I would certainly join a support group, so you're not out there alone. I would not be afraid to actively and strongly advocate for your child, even though you might get blowback within your community, within your school. And my school district thought I was nuts, completely nuts. But I wasn't deterred by that. So you have to be able to rise above it and be bold and speak up and be heard, and try to find mental health professionals, but you have to screen them very carefully and talk very crisply and clearly to them. Don't beat around the bush. Don't be afraid. You have to say exactly what you want. And I think, I know they're out there. They're very few and far between, but you have to really be clear when you're screening them that, here's the situation and you need to get feedback from them on how they'd handle that. So those are the things, be very involved in the school. I don't know. I guess if I could do it all over again, knowing what I know now, I think homeschooling would be an awesome idea.
Wow.
I know of parents that when they moved to the middle of nowhere where there wasn't any internet or anything else to block all that influence out from their daughter. That's the extent they went to. And I think it ultimately panned out where the kid was able to mature and grow without any outside influence, but not very many people are willing or able or capable of, going to those extremes. But, the schools and the internet are your enemies in this case, unfortunately. And, I would absolutely have all kinds of parental controls on any internet. I would be monitoring that very closely. Again, most parents aren't doing that, but, it's your child's life at stake here. And so my advice is to be a parent. You need to be a bold parent that's willing to take bold steps to do the best you can.
Great advice. All of that. I just know it's going to land in some people's heads and hearts and help them navigate this better. I am aware that there are 2 manuals out there for schools. That Transgender Trend has a manual out there for giving schools an alternative to just total affirmation. And then there's also a Family Alliance, I think it is, has another a manual out there for U.S. schools. The UK one, Transgender Trend, would work in U.S. schools too. Are you familiar with those at all?
Yep, I'm very familiar. Yep.
Yeah.
I had sent a copy of the Transgender Trend one to my school district. Idea what they did with it, but I know they got it.
Yeah.
So that would be another great thing, is to have the parents to come prepared with alternatives to the school.
Yeah.
Say, this is how you're handling it. Here's another alternative. And, my school, they claim that their hands were tied, that they're following the law, and, there is no law. They're not following a law. They're making up their own guidelines that they're instituting. And, we had a lot of discussions about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the time will come.
Go
ahead.
Be really prepared. That'd be another thing, just for the parents to be really prepared when they talk to the school districts or mental health professionals or whomever. The data's out there. Come with the data, and that'll make you more credible, and they'll have to have more likely to have a real discussion with you.
Good. Well, you can be reached at ROGD Chicago area at gmail.com. Those of you that want to, get in touch with Jay and his group, which is a global group, as he explained, that is available. And I will put the Transgender Trend and the other manual in the notes under this video on YouTube so that people can contact that also. And anything else that you want to add? Any contact information, more contact information or more advice before we sign off here, Jay?
No, I just want to thank you and your organization for stepping up and being heard and helping spread the word. We could use all the help we can get, so I appreciate that. Everyone in our support group appreciates that, and hopefully the combination of our power can push the ball in the right direction. We can slowly turn this thing around for the sake of all of our kids.
Yes, right on board with you with that, and thank you. And keep us posted, would you, WHRC USA, keep us posted if you have any victories. We need to hear about the victories and share the victories.
Yeah.
We need them, right? So, so thank you.
Yeah, so one quick, maybe think about something. So I took part in I wrote an affidavit for a lawsuit up in Wisconsin, and the ruling came back favorable. The lawsuit was about the school system can't hide information from the kids.
Great.
And so this went to court, and the first ruling is not over, but it was favorable. And so the interim ruling was while this is being finalized, the school district can no longer hide information from the parents.
That's fantastic.
So that's a little victory.
Yes, I think it's a big victory.
It's a big victory. I mean, I was able to play a part in the whole thing by that. And but that's one thing, and I'm sure that's happening in pockets all around the country.
Yeah, and the thing about that is things like this start slowly and then they snowball. They get bigger, and our voice gets stronger. We find the support with each other. So I'm encouraging everyone out there to, take this advice, use it, spread this video around. Jay's given fantastic advice to parents, and we need to work as a collective and have our collective strength. More lawsuits, more victories will turn this around. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Jay, for your time and all your work. And I'm encouraging everyone to go to www.womensdeclaration.com, read the declaration, and sign it if you would like to strengthen this voice. Okay. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you, Jay.